Learning Block 6, Transportation Operations. In this video, you'll learn about the role of transportation within the supply chain. Make sure to review the learning objectives for this learning block, and as you write your Cornell notes on the content, double check that you've got the bolded concepts here covered in your notes, as we'll be talking about how transportation affects the overall success of companies, common supply chain technology tools in transportation, the challenges transportation faces, modes of transportation, and how we measure quality. Transportation must be cost-effective and efficient to ensure customer satisfaction in order to help customers gain access to higher quality, lower-priced materials. Now, the demand for transportation services is derived from customer demand, meaning it is the orders or the demand that customers have that then triggers the need for transportation services. However, low-cost transportation is not really helpful if the products customers want don't arrive on time to the correct location or if they get damaged on the way there. That's why managing transportation processes is very important while also being complex with numerous obstacles. So there are the 7 rights of logistics. So transporting the right product to the right customer in the right quantity and the right condition at the right place and the right time and for the right cost. So if you've ever ordered anything online, think about these 7 rights for yourself. What was the thing that you ordered? Did it get to you in the right number of items? Was it in good condition? Did it arrive where you wanted it to, when it was supposed to, and hopefully for free, right? So just keep that in mind. The 7 rights apply to a customer, whether you are an individual customer or you're a business customer. There are a number of transportation challenges that companies face. Complex supply chains are often a result of company growth in response to customer demands. The more complex, the less cost-efficient the supply chain becomes, and that's a trade-off for expanding one's business. Offshore manufacturing in countries like China and India make transportation processes more expensive and complex. It's also not very green. However, due to the pandemic and the shutdowns in other countries, the U.S. has begun considering bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., known as onshoring, which would be very costly to implement. But it's also costly to not get what you need on time. So that's the cost analysis that companies have to make. Some organizations do not want to manage their transportation processes and instead will outsource them to third-party logistics providers or 3PLs, which are integrated providers of warehousing and transportation services. You heard about these in a previous learning block. The benefits of using 3PLs include enhanced customer service capabilities, greater flexibility, which impacts our variable costs, improved operational efficiency, and less or reduced capital expenditures, meaning you're not putting out the capital for those processes, the third party or 3PL is. We only have so much capacity on our roads and in our ports, so any surges in volumes being transported will be constrained by these limitations in our infrastructure. That's why over the years, the US government has often discussed about improving infrastructure, and if it's done correctly, could potentially help to increase capacity in our supply chains. Now, carriers or the companies that are transporting the goods for us are sensitive to resources needed for transportation. For example, you'll notice right now that gasoline prices are at an all-time high, along with labor costs. So those costs will get passed down to customers or to businesses. And lastly, government regulations require compliance from companies to ensure the safety and efficiency of our transportation systems. But those regulations can also impact the way we do business and the cost of doing business. Let's go ahead and look at the different modes of transportation. We've got road transport or motor carrier, and this is the most widely used domestic mode of transportation, domestic being within country. And that's because most freight is regional. So if you're on the freeway and you see these big trucks, those are examples of motor carriers or road transport happening all around you. Road transport or motor carrier is the mode of choice for high-value, time-sensitive goods. Now, the challenges with road transport is the rising costs, as I mentioned with fuel, labor issues because there's not enough drivers, and competition. Our next mode of transportation is rail transport, and these are primarily used for long distance or low value raw materials and manufactured products. Rail transport is the mode of choice for large volume and shipment that is over 900 miles. Rail transport are the lowest cost per ton mile. Some of the challenges is that it requires a large investment in terminals. You need equipment to begin operations, capacity issues as volume surges, and as I mentioned before about infrastructure, the tracks don't change. There are only a few large railroad companies that exist in the U.S. And if you've been paying attention to the news, there have been issues with labor strikes, for instance. Air transport has generally been viewed as expensive and only used in emergencies. However, due to increased demand on companies to have lower inventory levels and just-in-time operations, as well as the growth of e-commerce, air transport has grown over the years, with international air transportation projected to continue growing. Air transport is the mode of choice to ship small quantities of high-value, low-weight, semi-finished, and finished goods. Water transport is the major mode for international trade. It's how we get things around the globe. Water transport dominates all other modes when it comes to international freight revenue. Now, while these ships are slow, they offer tremendous capacities for volume freight, efficient fuel consumption, and low cost. Ocean transportation uses specialized ships like container ships, bulk carriers, and tankers. Now, the challenges with this is capacity, trade imbalances, rising costs, piracy, and careful planning to avoid ruining perishable cargo. Pipeline is another mode of transportation that we often don't think about. It's the hidden giant of transportation. It is the most economical form of transportation with the lowest cost per ton mile. Now, equipment, though, is fixed in place, so it acts both as a warehousing function and protecting the product from contamination. The U.S. has the largest network of energy pipelines of any nation, with pipelines being comprised of for-hire and private carriers. Now, the challenges with pipeline transport, though, is issues around safety and security. Now that we've gone through those 5 modes of transportation, if we decide to combine 2 or more of those modes, that's known as intermodal transportation. And that's used to transport and deliver the same cargo. So the cargo stays in a standard container throughout its journey, but it gets handed off between the different modes of transportation. Benefits include greater accessibility by linking these different modes of transportation. Overall cost efficiency is achieved without sacrificing quality of service, and it helps with global trade. Thanks to better information systems for tracking freight and development of intermodal terminals, as well as standard size containers that can be used on different modes, intermodal transport has grown in the last 20 years. Now, challenges of this type of transportation include congestion in transfer points, capacity, and again, as always, labor issues. Let's talk about shipment preparation. Routing guides are the instructions that companies set up for packing and packaging, carton and shipment labeling, insurance and billing requirements, and advanced shipping notification. The strategy behind using such routing guides is organizational efficiency, because we'll know how to execute these processes. But they also promote centralized control over the number of carriers being used and ensure that contractual agreements with carriers are being fulfilled. So think of it as a standard set of instructions that you can use with different companies. Shipments are accompanied by documentation that details what the shipment contains, where it is going, and to whom it is shipping. Now, the components of making these delivery decisions is what mode of transportation is most appropriate for what I'm shipping out, what carrier is best, so who should I have transport those materials, and what's the best value I can get. And recall, best value is the combination of both cost and efficiencies. Just want to make sure we're clear on some concepts. If you see the term shipper, that's the company who is usually the supplier or owner of the goods being shipped. And the carrier is the company that transports the goods for the shipper and is responsible for possible loss of goods during transport. So another way to think about this is if you've ever shipped something out, maybe you're selling something or sending out a gift, you are the shipper because you are the owner of that item, but you're using a carrier or company to send it on your behalf. And if they lose it in transport, they're liable. Whether you're using the U.S. Postal Service or if you're using a FedEx, that's the carrier that's transporting the goods. There are three common kinds of freight documentation involved. The first is the bill of lading, which we've learned in previous learning blocks. And again, this is the contract from shippers acknowledging specific goods have been delivered to specific locations. This is the receipt upon the delivery of goods and has to go with the goods and must include the authorized signatures from the shippers, the carriers, and receivers. So pretty much everybody that's touched it. Freight bills, also known as freight invoices, are different from bills of lading in that they are not a key piece of evidence if there's a dispute. Rather, they include additional specific information at the transaction level, such as costs and payment terms. A freight claim is a legal claim by shippers against carriers for financial compensation for loss or damage of shipments. These are also known as shipping claims, cargo claims, transportation claims, or loss and damage claims. We've got an example here of the FedEx claim form. The three types of freight claims include shortage or loss, damage, and delay. Damage can be labeled apparent, meaning we see it right away, like as we can see in this picture here with the boxes tipped over, or it could be concealed. With concealed damage, you don't realize it until after the shipments have already been received and signed for, and you can't tell that there's anything wrong with the boxes or the products. Now, while I mentioned earlier that there is government regulation to ensure safety and security of our transportation processes, there has been some deregulation that has allowed carriers more freedom to operate in competitive environments. Legislation has been passed to improve the safety of the transportation industry, reduce its impact on the environment, and protect the country against terrorism. Now, in the reading, the rules you see here went into effect July 2013. However, I did go to the U.S. Department of Transportation's Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration website to double check and see if there's anything new. And while there have been some exceptions or slight changes made in 2020 that went into effect 2021, these main hours of service regulations are still pretty much intact. The first being that truck drivers can drive for 11 hours within a consecutive 14-hour period, after which they have to take time off or be off duty for 10 hours. There's also a limit to your maximum work week of 70 hours. Drivers who reach that 70 hours in a week can only resume driving after they've rested for a consecutive 34 hours. So again, we really want to make sure that our drivers get the rest that they need so that they can safely operate their equipment. And then there's also the 30-minute break during the first 8 hours of a shift. While these hours of service regulations are intended to increase safety for the drivers and those on the road with drivers, this has led to rate increases at driving organizations as they maintain compliance to these rules. Now, hopefully you've noticed in our various learning blocks that quality is important throughout the supply chain. So just like in transportation systems, companies have to monitor and track to ensure quality of service. And that involves monitoring carrier performance of customer service demands, the service levels, shipment dates, arrival dates, damage information, and using standardized scorecards. Think of standardized scorecards like grading rubrics in school. Now, key performance indicators, or KPIs, are objective measures of carrier performance that are critical to company success. They're used for internal performance reviews as benchmarks. So this allows you to compare companies against their competition. These include transportation spending efficiency, freight protection, delivery service quality, and customer satisfaction. Thanks to new technologies, the supply chain is becoming more and more visible. Think about when you order something online, you're able to track and monitor where your orders are in the process and when they're likely to arrive on your doorstep. Same thing here, we've got transportation management systems, or TMS. These are the software tools related to moving goods throughout the supply chain. They help buyers and managers in making pre-shipment decisions. And when you combine it with an order management system, a warehouse management system, and other supply chaining tools, our supply chain becomes more efficient and, as I said, more visible. Different applications in the software include routing and scheduling, planning how to load the containers or vessels, of course, tracking orders, performance reporting and scorecarding, and auditing freight bills. That was actually something I did in a previous company, which was finding services that helped audit those freight bills, because oftentimes we were being overcharged or charged incorrectly, and that is an opportunity for cost savings. A few more common concepts you're likely going to hear is inbound, outbound, and reverse logistics. So you'll see here, inbound logistics is the transport and storage and delivery of goods coming into the business. So if you imagine you're the company in the middle here, anything that's coming to you from your suppliers is considered inbound. It's going into your company. Whereas outbound logistics is, again, the transport, storage, and delivery of goods that are leaving your company, leaving your business. So everything that you're sending out, going to the customer, is considered outbound. And again, this deals mostly with end products. Reverse logistics is once the goods have reached the customer, and now it's got to be returned through the supply chain because of some defects or issues. So this is where the customer will send it back and in reverse of our logistics. And depending on what the issue is, it can go to the company that you're in, or even back to the original supplier, depending on what the issues are. And as always, friendly reminders, take the weekly quiz before coming to class. You get 2 tries. Second try, you can do it anytime throughout the week, preferably before Sunday. Submit your Cornell notes of your readings, videos, and in-class discussions. And if you want extra practice, aka extra credit, on this week's concepts, make sure to check out the Quizlet link in Canvas. If you have any questions, just let me know.